Act 1. The Myth and the Awakening. Hook and Thesis. Have you ever wondered about that woman? The one who lives alone. No boyfriend, no partner, not even seeming like she's looking. The world gives her easy labels. Lonely, heartbroken, too picky. But the truth is far more uncomfortable, far more unsettling. The truth lies in something that deconstructs everything we were taught about a woman's role. Because when a woman chooses to be alone, she isn't getting lost. She's finding herself. And that kind of self-discovery doesn't come with applause or company. It comes with silence, strength, and a kind of freedom most people still don't understand. She's not lonely. She's selective. She's not cold. She just got tired of burning for people who never wanted to feel the warmth. There is something profoundly threatening about a woman who doesn't need a relationship to feel whole. It shatters the logic of control, dismantles the myth of emotional dependency, and reveals a brutal truth. Most men don't know what to do with a woman who doesn't need saving. And most women are still learning to recognize themselves in that silent yet deafening mirror of power. Act 2. The Jungian Key, Shadow and Sovereignty. The legendary psychologist Carl Jung once said that everything we deny in ourselves becomes part of our shadow. And many of these solitary women are actually a reflection of the collective shadow. They are what many dream of becoming, but few have the courage to embody. They don't scream for love. They whisper their choices. They don't put themselves on display. They retreat to preserve themselves. They're less interested in charming princes and more interested in their own peace. The world demands urgency to be with someone, but these women have discovered the power of being with themselves. The woman who lives alone isn't lost. She's operating on a different level, a level where nothing is begged for, it's chosen, where approval isn't needed, and her presence is enough. And maybe that's why she sparks so much judgment. What many still don't understand is that behind her apparent absence is a presence that fills, that transcends. She wants a love that doesn't shrink her, and until that comes along, she stands strong, whole, complete. Maybe you think this is exaggeration, pride, or emotional damage, but deep down there's a question pulsing inside you. What if that silent path is actually the only one that leads to the most important kind of love, the one that starts with you? The silence that surrounds her is not emptiness, it's a sanctuary. She didn't build that fortress to shut the world out. She built it to not lose herself. Act 3. The Inner Work, Scars and Clarity. Jung also said that everything we don't face in ourselves, we end up projecting onto others. And maybe that's why so many still confuse solitude with absence, when in reality, it is the fertile ground for self-discovery. While most people look to fill themselves through external connections, this woman turned her gaze inward. And there, in the vastness of her own unconscious, she faced the ghosts she avoided for years. Childhood wounds, unspoken abandonments, attachments disguised as love. Her decision to be alone didn't come from an open wound, but from a scar that finally healed. She didn't stop believing in love. She just stopped accepting what others called love when it only made her feel smaller. She knows chaos. She's loved until she lost herself. She's begged for crumbs that never should have been offered. But at some point, she woke up. That awakening was a series of disappointments that stopped hurting and started teaching. What you see now isn't coldness. It's emotional maturity. And maturity is scary because it demands presence, depth, and truth. She doesn't want just any company. She wants reciprocity. She's no longer attracted to promises, but to real presence. She doesn't want to be saved. She wants to be seen. And that takes courage to dive into the depths where few dare to go. And that's where many give up. Not because she's difficult, but because she's whole. Act 4. The Archetype of Wholeness. When a woman becomes whole, she awakens two extremes in the world, admiration and fear. Fear from those who still live in halves, waiting to be completed. She doesn't want to complete anyone. She wants to overflow alongside someone who has also found themselves. Until then, she remains alone, not by fate's whim, but out of loyalty to her own soul. She hears the conventional wisdom, "You're too picky, you should be more open, nobody's perfect." And she smiles, a calm, steady, almost ironic smile, because she knows what many call picky is simply the bare minimum, the minimum it took her decades to realize she deserves. She's looking for someone mature enough to love without destroying, someone who's done the inner work she has already faced. And let's be honest, that's not something you find on just any street corner. The discomfort she causes isn't in what she says, it's in what she represents. She's living proof that it's possible to be happy without depending on anyone else. And that tears masks off. Act 5. The Path of Individuation. Carl Jung taught that those who look outward dream, but those who look inward awaken. And it was precisely that inner journey that she took. It was a grueling process of stripping off masks, facing the ghosts of emotional dependency, and rebuilding herself piece by piece. She no longer defines herself through the eyes of others. She sees herself through her own eyes, and that changes everything. She once thought there was something wrong with her for being alone, but one day she understood it's better to be alone than to be invisible in a relationship. And that day, she made a pact with herself. Never again would she accept less than what she truly deserves. This woman is the living embodiment of Jung's individuation. She shattered, faced her shadow, descended into her unconscious, and returned more whole than ever before. She refuses to be half of anything again. She doesn't want someone to complete her. She wants someone to share that awareness with. Carl Jung also used to say that the tree that grows to heaven must also have roots that reach down to hell. And that's exactly what she lived through. She descended into the hell of her own story, faced ancestral fears, and broke cycles. She said no to relationships that repeated the same toxic script. When she stopped accepting less, the world tried to convince her she was wrong, but she stood her ground. Someone who has lived in their own abyss no longer fears absence. She learns to nourish herself with silence, to warm herself with her own presence. She's not unreachable. She simply no longer allows herself to be invaded. Act 6. The Final Truth. The Sanctuary. The world will keep trying to tell her she's missing something. It will keep offering distractions and love made for display, but she's already seen behind the curtain. It's not about finding someone. It's about never losing yourself again. When that realization blooms, everything changes. Desire becomes discernment. Lack becomes choice. Waiting becomes a path. This woman still longs for love. She still wants to be held, but she wants it without losing herself. She spent too long trying to squeeze into molds too small for the soul she carries. Now she only offers herself where there's room to be whole. Carl Jung would say she found wholeness not by eliminating opposites, but by integrating them. She doesn't reject love. She simply learned not to submit to unbalanced relationships where one must dim so the other can shine. She is too whole to settle for halves, too free to accept prisons disguised as care. And that is why she remains alone, not out of defeat, but out of integrity. Act 7. Call to Reflection. How many times have you wondered if being alone is failure or freedom? How many times have you felt the need to justify yourself for not having someone by your side? The woman who lives alone is more than just someone who doesn't fit the mold. She is a living symbol of emotional freedom, a reminder that it's possible to rebuild without hurry, without fear, and without needing to prove anything to anyone. She walks her own path, and along that journey, she lights little fires for others who are waking up too. If something inside you was touched by this story, maybe it's because deep down, you too are ready for a new kind of love, a love that begins with reconciliation with yourself. I invite you not to keep this realization to yourself. Share this video with other women who need to remember their own strength. Like it, comment, and subscribe to this channel. Because when something touches the soul, the least we can do is let it keep resonating.